Okay, I'm going to introduce to you Dr. Neil Goodman, and he's amazing. He is board certified in pediatrics and adolescent medicine. He's chief of pediatrics, Southeast Georgia Health System. He's a 14-year veteran, major in the U.S. Army Medical Corporation. He's fellowship trained at Fitzsimmons Army Medical Center, Aurora, Colorado. He's an MD from the Medical College of Ohio of University of Toledo. And he has a BS with distinction in microbiology and immunology from the Ohio State University. He's fellow of American Academy of Pediatrics. He's a member of American Academy of Anti-Aging in Medicine. He's a member of the Institute of Functional Medicine. He's the member of American College of Physician Executives, and he's a member of Southern Medical Association. And he's a top leader in our wonderful company, LifeVantage. He's a Premier Pro 6. So, Dr. Goodman, are you on?
I sure am, Julie. How are you? Great to see
you.
Great to see everybody tonight.
Yes, well, we're so excited to have you on, and we just want to thank you so much for, taking the time out of your busy schedule, because I understand you're still a working doctor. So you must have an incredibly busy schedule. So we so appreciate it. And we're so excited. I've been involved in LifeVantage for about 8 years. And when I got started, it was all about PROTANDIM NRF2. And that's what drew us into the company. But I love how LifeVantage has grown into becoming a nutrigenomic company. And, now we are just biohacking with this vitality stack. So I'm going to go ahead and just turn it over to you, Dr. Goodman. We're very excited to have you on here tonight.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Julie. And thank you also for everybody having me and inviting me to this webinar tonight. What I'd like to do is just to, as Julie said, I am a working doctor. In fact, I got back to my home about, maybe a half hour ago, had a very long day with patients. And of course, this is very fun for me to do because I love talking to people and I love talking about the science. So what I'd like to do at this point is I'd like to share my screen. And let's see if I can figure this out. There we go. And usually there's like a 5-second delay on these screen shares. And I'm going to go ahead and put it into presentation mode. And this is pretty much just my starter slide. And what I'd like to do today is to cover the science and the technology behind the Vitality Stack. And I'm going to go through each of the components of that. And if I can make the slide work here, I'm sorry.
Oh, it's looking good. I'm seeing catch the wave.
You see something? Oh, good. I'm waiting for, there we go. All right, we're going to go backward here a second. It's a little delayed.
I see.
We'll get the timing going here in a minute. Yep, hang on a second. There we go. All right, this is the title of the presentation today is The Biohacker's Guide. One more second. Sorry about this. The Biohacker's Guide to Wellness and Aging. And I like to tell my audiences that I talk to that this might be the single most important piece of health information that they might experience in their lives. And of course, as everybody knows, we need to make the FDA disclaimer that says that we do not make claims to treat, cure, or mitigate disease. And I see somebody writing on the screen. I'm not sure if somebody's got a touch screen or not. If it would be possible to remove that, that would be helpful.
Okay, what is it that you're seeing on the screen?
It looks like someone's writing or swiping on the screen.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure how that happened.
You see that?
Yeah, I do.
It may be that people are maybe sharing their screens on top of it. I'm not sure, but if they've got touch screens, it may in fact mark up the screen. But anyways, let's start with the 4 pillars of human health and wellness. You can see what I'm talking about, Julie, don't you?
I do, and I have no idea who is doing that.
Yeah. So human health and wellness can be broken down into 4 pillars, and I'm going to talk about these. The first pillar is that of oxidative stress. The second is that of mitochondrial function. The third pillar is that of the second brain as it relates to talking about probiotics. And the last one, we'll talk about the brain barrier, blood-brain barrier. And we refer to those as the core 4. So let's talk about oxidative stress first. As of course, this is our hallmark product that we're talking about. And it all comes down initially talking about oxygen. So of course, you know that oxygen is involved in our life. We take our first breath when we're born, but that oxygen that we breathe is actually only 21% oxygen. Most of it's inert, and more is actually toxic. We need it to live, but it's also the very thing that's killing us. And that's the thing that most people don't realize. And of course, we're trying to explain it to our public, that we're trying to educate about NRF2 technology, that oxygen is the very thing that will actually end our lives in the end. And as a pediatrician, if I were to expose young babies who are premature to oxygen, it actually causes them to be blind. So it can be quite toxic. So, you know, oxygen causes oxidation and has an effect on metal, and that effect can be seen as on steel. Rust, for example, causes aluminum to corrode, but our cells are rusting too. And an example of that would be this apple, which appears white and fleshy and bright at this time, but our cells also oxidize and they get wrinkles that leads to cell damage, inflammation, aging, ultimately disease, and ultimately cell death. So when that apple sits out in the oxygen environment, this is what happens to it. You're all familiar with this. And this is strictly because of the effects of oxidation on flesh. And of course, we're flesh too. So the same thing is happening to us, except that it's happening in a very, very slow fashion. So what causes that? The actual cause of oxidative injury is due to free radicals. And free radicals are caused by supercharged oxygen particles that are initiated by our exposure to things such as ionizing radiation, smoking, cigarette smoke, UV light, air pollution, inflammation, even our own metabolism. In the case of the pink thing that you see there on the left side, that's your mitochondria. Our bodies make free radicals by the millions every single day. And those free radicals will accumulate in our bodies and ultimately have effects on our own internal mechanism of the cell. One of the most obvious effects that it has is there in the center. It can actually cause damage to our DNA structure. And when our DNA or the basic instruction of the cell is damaged, then the cells start to fail and they start to make mistakes in the way that they code things. And that ultimately could lead to things such as cancer or the inability to heal ourselves. So oxygen is the common denominator here. It's at the root cause of all of this trouble. So we'll refer to those free radicals as the bad guys. We'll try to keep it simple. This is really a fight between the good forces in our body and the negative forces in our body. I'd like to talk about the good forces in our body. And I know the screen's a little messed up from all the markings on it. I hope you can see through it. Julie, are you still able to see that?
Yes.
Oh, good. Well, listen, at the top of that red triangle, we are born with certain primary internal antioxidants. And that's our primary defense system against all these free radicals that affect us from the moment that we're born. We try to, in modern life, and you hear it from your doctors and people who give you good instruction, that if you take antioxidants by mouth, that, and primarily we do that in our diet, of course, we might take, for example, vitamin C or vitamin A, or we might eat some kale or broccoli, drink coconut water. All these things are, in fact, antioxidants, but they're really secondary dietary antioxidants. They can't possibly contend with the number of free radicals that our body is producing by the millions. But we were, in fact, given a God-given gift when we were born of 3 primary antioxidants that do have the power to defend ourselves. And those 3 are go by the names of SOD, superoxide dismutase, catalase, and then glutathione peroxidase. And these 3 main antioxidants are more powerful than any antioxidant that you could possibly ingest. And so we're going to refer to those 3 antioxidants as the good guys. And if you've seen any of my lectures before, I like to equate it to Superman, because really this is a fight of good and evil. The good guys being our internal antioxidants and the bad guys being the free radicals. So when the amount of free radicals actually exceeds our ability to neutralize them, that's when we suffer from the ill effects of oxidative stress. And that's what we're talking about here. It's a battle. And at first we're winning the battle, but as we age, we have less and less capability to do that. And that results in this imbalance. And this imbalance typically occurs around age 20. So oxidative stress, we know, is the main cause of aging. And it's also the cause of over 200 and maybe even as many as 500 diseases. And you can actually do a web search on the PubMed.gov website, which is a division of the National Institute of Health. And you can put in oxidative stress and search for any disease process that you want. And more than likely, you're going to turn up a hit that says that oxidative stress is in fact linked to that disease. Examples would be arthritis, heart disease, Alzheimer's disease, ADHD, autism. There are hundreds and hundreds of these diseases linked to oxidative stress. So if you think then, in terms of all the body systems that you see around this circle, that inflammation and oxidative stress is in the center and is affecting all of these systems, such as the heart at the top, and on the right, the joints, and the lungs off to about 4 o'clock position, the brain below, blood vessels, eyes, etc. What I've done as a physician for the last 33 plus years is I've been involved in treating all of these different organ systems. If someone has, for example, a problem with their heart, we're going to maybe offer them some antihypertensive, some blood pressure medicine. Or if you have joint pain and arthritis, your doctor more than likely will prescribe you some medicines to help relieve that inflammation in the joint. For lung disease, asthma, for example, you might be given an inhaler or a puffer. But maybe modern medicine right now has this wrong. Maybe what we should be focusing on is the central part. And if we could reduce that inflammation and oxidative stress to a minimal level, maybe then, in fact, we could impact all of these body systems simultaneously. And that's where Superman comes in. We can do this. We can do this by increasing our cellular production of those 3 primary internal antioxidants: superoxide dismutase, catalase, and glutathione. If we bring those up, we'll reduce inflammation of our entire body. This is a phenomenal thing to know. And we don't have the ability to do this by ourselves anymore because, as I said, when we get older, we lose that innate ability because those enzymes become less effective. Well, everyone is born with 46 chromosomes, and this is our code of life, and our survival genes have actually been mapped. And we know that within the 23 pair of chromosomes, that there are genes that code for proteins and genes that code for enzymes. And in fact, the NRF2 protein and the NRF1 protein have been identified as the master regulators of cell protection. This is a phenomenal piece of information that we've been given. Well, it turns out that the NRF2 protein has some very, very special characteristics. If you activate it, you can increase your superoxide dismutase by 34%. And you can increase catalase by 54%. And finally, you can also increase glutathione by 300% in just 120 days. This is phenomenal. In doing all of this, you actually reduce your oxidative stress from free radical damage by 40% in 30 days in most people. And that's where PROTANDIM came into play. The same gentleman who discovered superoxide dismutase was the one who worked for the last 30 years to try to find out what products could actually upregulate those three important internal antioxidants. So it's important to know that those 23 pair of chromosomes that you have, only 20% of your DNA is ever expressed. 80% of it lies dormant. It's just waiting to be turned on. And you can actually change the way that your genes, that genetic code, is expressed. And when you do that, you're biohacking. That's what biohackers do. They are tapping into their genetic code using food, using nutrition to optimize their own health. There's nothing wrong with that. You're not biohacking. It's not like hacking a computer and doing something wrong. You're making yourself better. The other option is you can just let yourself be hijacked. Well, we're hijacked every single day. You're hijacked 24/7, either physically through injury or exposure to cancer, emotionally through your daily stressors, biochemically through exposure to toxins, radiation, allergens, pollution, drugs and alcohol, and a number of other things. But when you biohack, you optimize your genetic potential. You become the best version of yourself, the self that you were supposed to be, the self that's already coded into your genes. And you're using the science of nutrigenomics. And you know, what nutrigenomics merely is just a discussion about how food and food compounds interact with our gene expression. It's a research focused on the molecular level interaction between nutrients and other compounds with our genes. And there are lots of foods that do this. But if you find the right ones and you utilize them, you can actually make your genes do the job that they were supposed to do in the first place. That's incredible knowledge. That whole science, besides nutrigenomics, is also referred to as epigenetics. They essentially mean the same thing. I want to talk for a moment about the difference between supplementing and activating. When you supplement with a vitamin, say for example, you're guessing. There's lack of product-specific research that says what that does for you. There's lack of quality control in those products. There are 150, if not more than that, of vitamin D tablets, or melatonin, or a number of other over-the-counter products that you can find at, say, for example, the GNC store. There's lack of quality control. Which one's good? Which one works? Which one doesn't? You don't know. You do not know the end result of what effect it has on your genes or on your overall health. But when you use the new science of nutrigenomics and epigenetics, you're using today's breakthroughs. These are peer-reviewed and published studies. There's thousands of them on PubMed.gov, and 27 in particular with relating to the NRF2 pathway and the use of PROTANDIM, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. Most of these were funded by third-party independent funding, which means that they had nothing to do with LifeVantage company. And they were looking at the end result on genes and cellular health. And they also used the concept of synergy, that is, using things in combination for the common good. So if we take a look at this picture here, I think most of us will agree that this is the problem with our food system. You can buy a carton of French fries for $1, But God forbid you try to get a cup of fruit. It's going to cost you $6. So the food industry is not invested in your health. People who are fed by the food industry pays no attention to health. And then they're treated by the health industry, people like me, which before my current knowledge and what I've learned, pays no attention to food. Well, LifeVantage seeks to change that paradigm. We are so lucky to be able to associate with a company that is so involved in the empowerment of our ability to find food and food products that can actually help us to heal. And they do this with the little yellow pill, which is PROTANDIM NRF2, and its sister product, PROTANDIM NRF1. This is an amazing feat. Finally, we have somebody on our side. So let's talk about PROTANDIM NRF2 for a minute. This is a synergizer, as I said, meaning things work together greater than the common good. So how does PROTANDIM NRF2 work? If you look at that little purple molecule up in the upper right-hand corner, that's the PROTANDIM molecule. Essentially what it does is it acts like a door knocker. The green part is the cell. The pink part at the bottom of the screen is the nucleus of the cell, where all of the instruction is in the cell. When that PROTANDIM comes along and attaches to the side of the cell, it creates a cascade of chemical reactions that release chemicals that help the NRF2 molecule, which is the little red bead that you see off on the right. It allows it to be released from a protein and migrates it to the center of the cell, where it is able to turn on the nucleus and cause it to produce protective enzymes. And those enzymes are the three that I talked about: superoxide dismutase, catalase, and glutathione peroxidase. So this is an example of what is in PROTANDIM. I think many of you are already familiar with this, but let's just go over the 5 ingredients for those in our audience who don't know what it contains. It contains ashwagandha root, bacopa extract, green tea extract, which has been used for, 5,000 years to the betterment of mankind by the Chinese and the Asians. They didn't really understand why it worked, but we do now. Milk thistle extract was also used in this product, and then turmeric. And turmeric is also a spice, of course, and it's also used in the Asian and Indian culture. But again, nobody really understood why it worked. Well, if you use any one of those products by themselves, if you look at the line at the bottom of this graph on the left-hand side, you'll see that the effect in the induction of the NRF2 gene or messenger protein is relatively minimal. You'll see that there's an area here where the blue bar is. It really only gets up to be this high. But look what happens when you use the concept of synergy and you put these 5 ingredients together in a way that they complement each other. You get this red bar. This is a 1,800-fold increase in the net effect of the ingredients than if you took any one of them by themselves. And this is what the patent was derived for PROTANDIM NRF2. They've got 7 patents, in fact, to protect the intellectual property rights on this, and we have access to this. This is the flagship breaking product. So PROTANDIM NRF2, it lowers oxidative stress by an average of 40% in 30 days, as I mentioned. It significantly reduces cellular stress through NRF2 activation. And it induces also enzymes. I mentioned enzymes, of which 3 before I mentioned are capable of neutralizing more than 1 million free radicals in all of your cells. I mean, you have, Julie, 37 trillion cells in your body. Imagine turning them all on simultaneously, because that NRF2 pathway is in every single cell in your body, not just your heart, not just your brain, not just your skin, but in your eyes. It's in your teeth, it's in your mouth, it's in your knees, it's in your cartilage. they are all being turned on simultaneously to reduce free radical damage in all of those tissues. And then one thing that's really not played up very much that I'm going to talk about a little bit more today is it also helps to regulate over 400, maybe as close to 500 different survival genes, genes that we need, in fact, to survive. And I'll mention a few of those. This is sort of like the concept of tuning your piano. We'll think of our body as a piano that may be out of tune, but we're going to explain that a little bit later here. Lastly, it helps the body to repair and rejuvenate its own cells because you've turned on these natural healing processes. And this is also the only natural supplement that was proven to extend life in male mice mammal models by 7%. This was a 10-year study done by the National Institute of Aging, which is a division of the National Institute of Health, which is our public health organization that looks into the curing and helping of disease. So if you were to take, say, for example, the external antioxidants that I mentioned before, things that help to, like, for example, oranges or vitamin C or blueberries or kale, you would need so many of those items in order to reduce the free radical damage to your cells that you would be sick with it. I mean, you would have to eat 11 pounds of blueberries, 375 oranges, or you'd have to drink 87 glasses of wine to get enough resveratrol in it in order to accomplish what one PROTANDIM can do for you in a day. So we say then that one PROTANDIM affects 1,000,000-fold free radicals, whereas the external antioxidants, only one molecule affects one free radical. So I would rather be on the 1 to 1 million team than the 1 to 1 team. So when you look at oxidative stress on this bar graph, if you take a person who's age 20 and compare them to a person who's age 80, this is what your oxidative stress level does as you age. It's essentially a straight line up from age 20 on. At first, your first 20 years, it's pretty level. That's the phase of time that your superoxide dismutase and those other good guys are keeping the playing field at bay. They're managing to tamp down the effects of free radical damage. But as I said, after age 20, it falls apart. And so without PROTANDIM, this oxidative stress level increases and leads to aging and disease. But look what happens if you give that same group of people PROTANDIM. Now all of a sudden you've reduced the oxidative stress level even at age 80 to the level of a 20-year-old. Now folks, this is an FDA approved statement. PROTANDIM has the ability to reduce oxidative stress or free radical damage by 40 to 70% in almost everyone in just 30 days. This is what we're allowed to say. We can't say it cures disease. You have to make that connection yourself. But we can say that it is clinically proven to work for anyone of any age. And for those people who really follow statistics, it has a p-value of 0.001, which means basically 99.99% of people responded to this. That's absolutely amazing. There is no other product in the history of man that has the ability to do this. Now, this is a graph. It's a little messed up from all those marks on there, which I wish I could get rid of, but I can't. But I want to show you. This is on the right-hand corner. This is a graph of a chemical called sulforaphane. Sulforaphane is an NRF2 activator that exists in broccoli and kale and other cruciferous vegetables. And I just want you to note the level of activity of NRF2 induction. It's relatively low. It approaches maybe 20 or 25. Now let's look at this graph on the left-hand side. This is dimethyl fumarate. This is also known as Tecfidera. Tecfidera is a drug. It's a drug produced by big pharma companies. It's used for treating multiple sclerosis. It achieves a level of about 63 approximately on the graph. And guess what? It's $50,000 a year to take it. And it also has side effects, and it's a chemical. Here's another drug that failed. This is one called bardoxolone. It was a little bit higher than dimethyl fumarate, but you can see the level of induction of NRF2 in the cells. And now I want you to see this. This just blows it away. Look at Protandim in yellow. This is at the level of about 143. And guys, it's $41 a month to have this compared to a $50,000 drug. Can you imagine that a food product has this ability to induce NRF2? This is unbelievable. It's absolutely amazing. I'm lucky that I have the ability to talk about it. And I am thrilled to tell people about this all the time. And you need to tell everybody about this. This is what is unbelievable about the science. And that's why it's important to know about the science so that you can see what we have in front of us. So that's an incredible feat from a food product. All right, let's talk about the idea of tuning your piano. I mentioned this before. You know, when you tune a piano, you know, you're bringing it into harmony. You're adjusting something for precise functioning. That's what tuning means. So if we take the analogy of the piano being our body, and let's look at this keyboard. Each of those keys, say, represents one of our genes. This is, of course, a real keyboard with frequencies above. Don't pay any attention to that. Just get the concept that our body is a piano. And let's now zoom in on that keyboard. And let's just look at these keys. Well, you know, your genes are very similar to that. Here's that middle C octave. And if it's in tune, all of those notes have an assigned frequency, and they play at a nice melodic rate, and this keyboard sounds wonderful. So in 1969, when Grandma bought her piano, it was brand new. It sounded like this, and it was in perfect tune. But what happens if you have that piano up in the attic for 50 years and it's exposed to heat or moisture? Well, guys, it looks more like this. The notes play unevenly. It sounds discordant. It's out of tune, and it's not functioning very well, and it's not pleasant to listen to. Well, this is the exact same analogy of what happens to our body. Look at this. This is the 400 survival genes from 1 to 392 on the right. Remember now that 3 of those are the 3 genes we talked about: superoxide dismutase, catalase, and glutathione peroxidase. But we're going to talk about the other 400 genes that are survival genes. This is what the frequency looks like of those keys, if you will. Now let's zoom in on the keyboard. Let's just look at 63. Zoom in on this a little closer, and let's look at it even more microscopically. Well, this is what your gene expression looks like before Protandim is put into the system. Look at these bar graphs. They're all over the place. This is your gene expression. It is discordant. It is not in tune. Some of them are low. For example, the ones that might be low would be superoxide dismutase. They are underrepresented. These are ones that are high. This might represent FAB4 and 5. Those are genes that are responsible for hardening of the arteries and calcification of your blood vessels. They're high. When you put Protandim into the mixture, look what happens. The one that was high is brought down. The one that was low is brought up. And now look how smooth this line is. Your gene expression has been tuned. It's a level field. Your cells are working at optimal efficiency at this point. And with this then comes health. And with this comes repair. And your body is improving itself. That's what the magic of Protandim NRF2 is. So I mentioned FAB4 and 5. They're responsible for metabolic syndrome, inflammation, and coronary calcium deposition in the blood cells. These are examples of a gene that was too high. And when Protandim is brought into the mix, as I said, it drops it down. I don't know if you can see this graph, but it's an 85 to, in some cases, 66% reduction, but as much as 85% reduced. Now, this is a gene that's responsible for hardening of the arteries. And as I said, metabolic syndrome. It's brought back into a level playing field of a healthy range. So that's just an example of how that affects the tuning of our body. And so in the future, you and me and grandma and her family are going to say that they actually had their genes tuned by PROTANDIM. Remember I said epigenetics and I said nutrigenomics? We're talking about genes affected by food. This is the science. All right, so, this was so unbelievable that Washington State University in 2015 said this was potentially the most extraordinary therapeutic and preventative breakthrough in the history of medicine. And folks, we have this available to tell people about. This is why I'm so excited every time I present the science. It seems miraculous, but it makes sense when you understand the science. And once you understand the science, you can explain it to other people. All right, I want to move on. I want to talk about mitochondrial function now. We're going to talk about NRF1. This is also fascinating, but I'm going to move a little quicker because I don't want anybody to fall asleep. I know it's real detailed. I promise you there's no test at the end of this talk. So if we look at mitochondrial function, this is your mitochondria. The mitochondria is a very small, what we call an organelle. It exists inside your cell, and it is responsible for every metabolic energy forming sequence that your body makes. It's responsible for energy production and metabolism. Well, look over to the far left on this particular image. You'll see that picture of that mitochondria. Well, it's part of the interior of the cell. And remember now, it has the ability to also make free radicals. So here's this little microscopic thing inside your cell that's producing free radicals, and yet you need it because you need it for energy. This cell is essentially trying to destroy itself. As you oxidize air, as you metabolize, as you eat food and burn fuel, you are essentially giving off free radicals from those mitochondria, which then go to not only destroy the mitochondria, but to also destroy the DNA that codes for all those sequences that we talked about. There's the danger. So free radicals act like little miniature hurricanes inside our cells. They not only destroy the nucleus where the DNA is, but they also come back and destroy the mitochondria. And you remember now, I said the mitochondria is responsible for metabolism and energy production. So what do you think happens if you destroy that mitochondria? Well, here's your cell, and the nucleus is that big purple thing in the center where everything's coded for, all the genetic expression. And these three arrows point to those three mitochondria. Now, in truth, your cells have probably 200 to 400 mitochondria each. And they're all doing their job. And the ones that have the most mitochondria are the cells that are most metabolically active. Those would be your brain, the ovaries and the testes in men, also your heart muscle, your actual muscles. These are the cells that have the most mitochondria because they're the ones that need the most energy. So what would happen if you got rid of those mitochondria? Say the nucleus is still there, but you get rid of that mitochondria. I'll tell you what happens. The cell is dead. It's a walking dead cell. It doesn't even know it. That cell will implode at this point because it has no way to make ATP or energy. And all of the metabolic processes that take place in that cell come to a halt. So essentially, as I said, it's destroyed from the inside out. So if you have decrease in your mitochondria, you have a decrease in your metabolism. And if you have a decrease in metabolism, your energy level goes down. And what happens if your energy level goes down and your cells can't burn fuel like they normally do? You gain weight. And isn't that what happens to us as we get older? We gain weight because our body becomes less efficient at burning fuel. But not only that, when you have decreased energy, your body heals less well. It doesn't have the ability to repair itself anymore. And when that happens, your ability to think clearly, because your brain's affected, your emotions are affected, your ability to concentrate declines. This is what we refer to as brain fog. And these are the leading symptoms of dementia as we get older. It's what all of us fear. Well, this is the purpose of PROTANDIM NRF1 Synergizer. It activates the NRF1 protein. The NRF1 protein, its job is to increase the number of mitochondria, to turn on the coding for more production. It protects the mitochondria from further damage. It supports the cell's ability to rejuvenate. It also supports ATP energy formation for obvious reasons, which then, as I mentioned, improves brain function. It improves your heart function. And it supports your blood cell and blood vessel formation in your heart and how your body metabolizes. So this is an amazing combination. PROTANDIM NRF1 and NRF2, two components of the vitality stack, and this is why we refer to it as the 1-2 punch. It really is an unbelievable 1-2 punch. Now, of course, this preceded the vitality stack, and the vitality stack has many, many more components. And I don't want to minimize the importance of those components either, but clearly the 1-2 punch is at the heart of what the majority of the vitality stack is about. So let's talk now about a concept called the second brain. So the second brain consists of the microbiome. It's the bacteria in your gut. I don't know if you know this, but if you were to measure the number of DNA or the amount of DNA in the bacteria that lives in your gut, it's actually more than all of your human DNA combined. Therefore, in fact, we're actually more microbial than we are human. And that's an amazing fact. People don't realize how important those bacteria are to us. We actually have more of them than we have of us. So doesn't it make sense that it's important? And that's why having good probiotics or good gut health is so important to your own health. There are bad bacteria which have a tendency to persist in your gut. They're hard to get rid of. And then there are the good bacteria who are very fragile and they're constantly being depleted. They're sensitive to assault by the things that we eat and the things that we put in our body. Bad foods, high carbohydrates, alcohol, drugs, antibiotics. We need to have balance in order to maintain the integrity of our gut lining. So this is where probiotics are important. So the microbiome, the bacteria that live in your gut, one thing that people also don't understand is that they actually secrete neurotransmitters, the same ones that our brain uses to talk to our body. It secretes serotonin. They secrete dopamine. They secrete norepinephrine. These, you guys, are neurotransmitters, the same things our brain uses to send down our nerve pathways to talk to our muscles, to talk to our brain. It affects our emotions and how we feel. So if you have a problem with your gut or inflammation, since the gut's job is primarily absorption, we're now absorbing that abnormal microbial signaling, those neurotransmitters. That's why we call the gut the second brain, because now the microbes are sending signals to your first brain and telling you how they feel. And if they feel bad, you feel bad. So clearly, this has an effect on your well-being. Well, you can do something about that. You can put in your gut a healthy probiotic balance. And because you do not want to have the effects of inflammation, allowing a leaky gut and allowing those neurotransmitters that are present in abnormal quantities from being absorbed and affecting your emotions, leading to depression, anxiety, and maybe even decreasing your memory capacity. We know, at least in my field, autism and Down syndrome, which is very germane to pediatrics, that it has been implicated, the leaky gut has been implicated in autism as one of the factors. And another thing you need to know about the gut is it's also home to 70% of your immune system. That means your infection-fighting cells live in the periphery of your gut. If your gut is not healthy, your immune system is not healthy. So that's an amazing thing to know, is that how important your gut is. So what PHYSIQ PROBIO attempts to do is to provide you with each of those packets, the 3 pills that you might take, or pellets, if you will. It provides you with 6 billion colony-forming units. And each of those 6 billion colony-forming units contains 6 helpful strains of bacteria, the kind that belong in your gut. But you know, what number of bacteria, if you swallow a probiotic such as, say, yogurt or Activia, if to name a brand, or say you drink kefir or kefir yogurt or Greek yogurt, how much of that probiotic actually makes it to your intestine? Well, I'm sorry to tell you that even the best probiotic only gets 4 to 5% into your gut. That means it doesn't matter how many colony-forming units it says on the bottle. If it said 20 billion colony-forming units and you only got 4% of them into your gut, you're talking about a minuscule quantity. But this product with BioHACK delivery system, which was developed and is part of the Vitality Stack line, gets 60% of the 6 billion colony-forming units into your intestine delivered over 10 hours. Compare that to 4 to 5%. That's 15 times more bioavailable probiotics. So in fact, the gut bacteria is released in the intestine where it belongs. It gets to where it needs to be. And because of a time delay system, the ones that need to be in the front part of the gut get to the front part of the gut, and the ones that are supposed to be deposited at the end of the gut get to the end of the gut. There is no other delivery system that has the ability to do that. And we have that. We have that as part of our Vitality Stack and as part of the PROBIO probiotics that are produced by LifeVantage. And additionally, not only that, they also added Wellmune, which is a beta-glycan that's placed in there to turn on your immune system so that the white cells that live in your gut that are there to respond to infection are at peak efficiency so that you can fight off disease. So lastly, I'd like to talk about the last component and the last pillar of human health and wellness, and this is the Omega Plus product and how it affects our blood-brain barrier. Okay, so the brain has a barrier around it, if that part wasn't made clear in that slide, and it's actually produced by a line of lipid that essentially makes a impenetrable space. And your healthy brain membrane, this barrier, if you will, is maintained its integrity by the presence of omega-3 lipids. Well, you cannot get omega-3 lipids made by your own body. You have to take them in your diet. There is no other way to get them in there. When you were born, and if you nursed with your mother, or if in the current modern age we have formula that contains omega-3s, those omega-3s from mother's breast milk was made to form your brain. Your brain is 70% fat, and the fats that primarily make up your brain are, in fact, omega-3s. We also need omega-3s for healthy muscle and joints. We need it for a healthy heart. It also lowers your cholesterol. It improves cellular communication pathways because it's also the coating of all your nerve tissue. It functions in an anti-cancer and an anti-diabetes way as well. It has multiple functions. Additionally, in this product, LifeVantage placed omega-7, which is also anti-inflammatory, meaning good for your joints, good for your heart, and it's also anti-diabetes. And lastly, the mother of all vitamins, vitamin D3. It contains 800 units of vitamin D3. Now, I will say that many of us need more than that, but 800 units is a good amount to take. And for a biohacker starter kit, LifeVantage's Vitality Stack is an excellent place to start. Of course, people might want to take additional vitamin D if they were told that they need it. We need it for our bones. We need it for healthy muscles. Your immune system will fail without vitamin D being present, and so you need it for that. Most Americans are in fact deficient in vitamin D. Many of us have gotten away from drinking milk, which is fortified with vitamin D. And if anyone has told you, well, get plenty of sunlight and that will raise your vitamin D, I'm going to tell you now, it's insufficient to raise your vitamin D to the quantities necessary for good health. And lastly, vitamin D helps to protect the male prostate gland and the female breast. So let's talk about those omega-3 fatty acids once more. Remember that the brain is 70% fatty tissue. The DHA to EPA ratio is 3:1, which is the same as mother's breast milk. And just like mother's breast milk, it's there to make your brain. It's the purest quality. It's 100% traceable down to the very boat that it came from. It's not rancid. Many fish oil pills that you might take have a smell to them. They give you, fish burps, indigestion. You smell like fish. Your skin smells like fish. This does not have that fish smell. That's because the oils that are contained in it that are derived from fish are not oxidized. So omega-3 fatty acids, there they are, going for a healthy brain. It's your daily dose of smart, just like your mother told you. And this is one of my neurologist colleagues' daughter. This is Charlisa Hudson's daughter, Elle, and she's actually taking one of those omega-3 vitamins. She likes it. She bites into it and sucks the juice out of it. And she thinks they're like candy. So this is something that anybody can take. You do not have to take the gelatin capsule. You can poke a hole in it. You can squirt it into foods if you choose to. They're pleasant enough to take. So biohacking, we talked about this was the biohacker starter kit. This is the next level, guys. If you do the core 4, the vitality stack, you're reducing inflammation, you're debloating yourself, you're repairing your leaky gut, you're supporting your immune function, you're supporting your heart health, you'll have increased energy, enhanced mood, improved sleep. I mean, who wouldn't want all of these features? This is why this product is so successful. And this is why it won the award this year as the best nutraceutical product, third best. I guess it won the bronze award for new product in this particular environment of nutrigenomics. So in summary, biohacking with Vitality Stack, cellular repair due to nuclear factor erythroid-derived, or NRF2. It's a mouthful, I know it. Remember, this regulates the expression of antioxidant proteins that protect you against oxidative damage triggered by injury and inflammation, and upregulates over 400 survival genes. The second item, cellular energy. The nuclear respiratory factor NRF1. This, again, regulates cell growth and nuclear genes required for cell respiration. In other words, mitochondrial function, mitochondrial energy formation. The third item, the concept of the second brain and the microbiome, talking about probiotics and prebiotics, changes the environment of your microbiome, repairs your leaky gut, restores proper gut-brain connection. And lastly, the brain barrier, which is your essential fatty acids, omega-3 and omega-7 and vitamin D, which enhances your intracellular communication and builds healthy cell membranes and provides good brain function. What's not to like? So we have unbelievable products in the LifeVantage line. I'm not going to talk about the PHYSIQ line otherwise, but do know that the PROBIO is also included in the PHYSIQ weight management repertoire. So I'm going to stop my share at this point on my screen. I've really said quite a bit. I don't want to put anybody to sleep. I know a lot of people are watching. I hope that this helps explain some of the science. It's so complicated, honestly, but my job day in and day out is not only to take care of kids, but also to teach. I'm an educator and a professor of pediatrics for our medical school. And in our medical school, I teach not only PA students, but medical students and nurses. And I think it's important for everybody to know that nutrigenomics is as important as any medicine that anybody might ever take. So without further ado, Julie, I'm going to give this back to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Goodman. We really appreciate you sharing your knowledge with us. This was really fascinating, and I'm sure glad that there's not a test, like you said, because wow, that was just stocked full of great information. And it's great to just know and better understand what these products do for us. And so with that, I have one question. I know it's getting late, and I know everybody was just super blessed by your presentation. Do you have any quick tips as far as the best way to take these products? I know some people, they just, take them all together first thing in the morning, and other people take them different ways. Do you have a preference, or do you feel like everybody needs to kind of figure that out for themselves because we're all a little biochemically different?
Right. I think that's an excellent question. I'm going to tell you what I do, and I probably do what the majority of people do. It just matters whether or not you can take a mouthful of pills all at once. I take actually all of them in the morning with my breakfast. I typically take my NRF1 and NRF2 together with the omegas, specifically because they actually dissolve better in fat. And since the omega-3 oils are in fact a fat, they seem to make an ideal blend. So that would be a good way to do it. A lot of times the probiotics go better if you can take it with food. So if, for example, you want to save that part of your probiotic strip on the Vitality Stack, if you use the packets as opposed to the bottle of pills, you potentially could take those probiotics with your meal. You could do one at each meal if you wanted to, but honestly, I think you run the risk that you're going to lose some of those probiotics in your pocket or your briefcase. So my suggestion is to take them with a meal and not to open up the packet until you're ready to consume all three of them. Now, there are athletes that have high degrees of oxidative stress and inflammation, marathon runners and so forth, or if in fact you're really unhealthy and you feel the need that you need an extra boost in your anti-inflammation capability. Some people even do the Vitality Stack twice a day. So there are many elite athletes and ultra marathoners and Olympic athletes that'll take a Vitality Stack in the morning with their diet, and then they'll take a Vitality Stack in the evening, and that's okay too. So there are lots of different ways to do that. It really depends if you can. Some people just can't swallow, that many pills at once. I just pace it and take it over the course of a half hour or so in the morning, and if you can take it with food, I think that's ideal.
Thank you so much. One other question related to that. If somebody is using medications, different medications, do you recommend taking the Vitality Stack at a different time than the medications?
So I think it's important to know that the Vitality Stack, given that these are food items, they are really not, for the most part, going to interfere with most medicines that anybody takes. I've not really heard any complaints about it interfering with the uptake of any other drugs. There might be some specific reasons not to take that way, though. And in that instance, what I suggest is just separate your regular medicines by a half hour or an hour from your regular pills if you're concerned about it. But in general, because we're talking about a food item, I have not found any negative association of taking this at the same time as your medicines.
Right. Okay. I didn't know if any of the medications would override the effectiveness of the products.
No, other than, for example, an antibiotic. I don't think an antibiotic taken at the same time as a probiotic is a good idea because you're really counteracting the probiotic. You're essentially neutralizing it. I would, in that instance, separate it by 2 hours. If you had to take an antibiotic every day, I would take the antibiotic and then 2 hours later, I'd follow it with the probiotic to try to restore the gut health. There's no sense in taking those two together.
Okay, thank you so much. I know people probably have questions, but it's getting a little late here. So let me just, I don't know.
I'll let you, Julie, I was going to say, I'm going to let you field the questions from the gallery because I'm sure that there will be lots and lots of questions. If you want to pick a couple highlights of some things that you'd like to have me answer, I'm happy to do that. I don't want to keep anybody too long. Obviously, it went very long. It was an hour talk. Usually, it doesn't go that long, but I was having some technical difficulties.
Okay, let me just look here. We'll just do 1 or 2 questions because of the time. Okay, what can you say about any experiences of NRF2 and NRF1 and maybe even probiotics regarding any influences on Down syndrome?
Well, again, first of all, as I said at the very beginning of the lecture, we cannot say that taking any of these products is meant to cure, mitigate, or treat disease. That being said, there are many people that have Down syndrome that have had improvement in their mental functioning, that they are able to mentate quicker or faster. The same is true of patients with autism. We've had many anecdotal stories within my practice of children who, when they were placed on NRF2, as well as a few other products in the Vitality Stack, such as Omegas, and also the Axio drink, which we didn't really talk about today, that they've had some phenomenal increase in their ability to mentate and to function and to think. And the same is true of folks that have Parkinson's disease and also folks that have Alzheimer's. But you cannot say that specifically these products will treat those conditions. I think it's important to say that.
Yes, okay, great. One more question. Someone says they might have missed it, but what kind of fish is found in the omega? What is the source?
My understanding, it's cod and pollock primarily, or it's a Nordic fish, and it comes from a Nordic source. Again, it's highly traceable. These fish are not collected and let to sit on the dock to turn rancid before they're processed. So it's a very, very ultra pure. There's no arsenic. There's no mercury in the fish. They are, this is one thing that LifeVantage was very, very clear about. These products, the manufacturing process for these products in every single thing that LifeVantage is putting out is even higher than what you would refer to as organic. They are ultra pure, meaning the highest manufacturing standards in the manufacturing and pharmaceutical industry are being utilized to produce these products for you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Goodman. You're just a wealth of information, and we've so enjoyed your talk and all your knowledge, and just taking this time with us is so special. And thanks for letting us record it too, because I know there's some other people that weren't able to join us tonight that want to listen to the recording. So we're just honored and privileged to have you on here with us. So thanks so much. I'm going to dismiss you now, and we might have a couple of announcements. I believe Mark Harris is on here, and if he is still on, Mark, I'm going to turn it over to you. And thanks again, Dr. Goodman, and thank you everyone for joining us tonight.
You're so welcome, and thank you again for having me for this conference. I was happy to present it to your team. And again, I appreciate the opportunity to teach. It's what I live to do, and I'm glad it was useful to you.
Yes, thanks so much. Okay, Mark Harris, ProAid and our organization here. Are you still available, Mark? Did you?
I am still available. That was awesome. Of course I'm here.
Okay.
And so I've got 6 minutes past the top of the hour, so we won't hold everybody. Obviously, we're 16 days away from convention. And I do want to put that in everybody's, just in front of everybody's radar. But first, let me say, Dr. Goodman, how impressive it is, and how such a validation that we are all in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing with the right people. And the fact that you are with us lends a tremendous amount of validation and credibility. I understand that there are about 850 medical practitioners that have joined LifeVantage as distributors. Think about that. If you're looking at this opportunity for the first time, I don't think that's ever happened in this profession of network marketing, that we have this many practitioners and clinicians, scientists, doctors, veterinarians, dentists, and specialists looking at this as a better tool in their toolbox than the limited tools that they've had heretofore. So thank you again, Dr. Goodman. That was fantastic. And I'm sure that information will be shared many, 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 many times as well. And let us apologize for the technical difficulties that you had with the screen. Those of you that joined late, you saw there was a little bit of scribbling on there. We'll assume that's on us, and our apologies for that, Dr. Goodman. Just a reminder with Salt Lake City, if you're brand new and you've joined LifeVantage with a gold pack or a platinum pack, your registration to Salt Lake City, our global convention coming up in 16 days, is already paid for. You are already in. All you have to do is go on, use that code you received in your platinum pack or your gold pack, and register. Then you just got to find a way to get there and somebody to bunk up with, and maybe grab some peanut butter and jelly sandwiches or some pizza, and come join us for what is sure to be a grand hootenanny. This only happens once every year and a half. So if you miss it, you're just going to miss it. So I wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that, and time is of the essence, because those hotel rooms are filling up, the flights are filling up, and they're becoming more expensive, obviously, as we get closer to our the granddaddy of them all, our Super Bowl. Next week, we're going to spend a good chunk of time focus on what convention means to you and your teams, the statistics behind it, empirical data that will show you how important that getting you and your team to Salt Lake City in 16 days is. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Julie, if you'll close this up, sis. And we're going to post this, obviously. It will be on the Activators Facebook group page. We will post this on the LifeVantage Transformational Business group page. If you need access to one of those, please private message Julie or myself or Mom Jackie, who is recovering from foot surgery. Mwah. Mwah. Love you, miss you. And with that, Julie, back to you. I'm done.
Okay, great. Well, thanks, Mark. And that's actually it for tonight, folks. Thanks so much for staying on here so long. And we'll get this right out so that you can share this with the people that couldn't be on here tonight. So thanks, everybody. Love you all. Have a great rest of the week. Bye-bye.